You're listening to the Matt the Stat Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Matt the Stat, where we talk about football, baseball, basketball, and everything sports. So today, for my show, I'll be talking to you guys about the Dallas Cowboys and give you guys a 2025 training camp preview. Yes, training camp is just 3 days away. The Cowboys are supposed to arrive in Oxnard, California tomorrow, Sunday afternoon. And I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm sure you guys are excited. And you know what? I'm looking forward to it. So, got a great show for you guys today. Going to go over some position battles, go over every single position, give you guys the most important positions that are going to need some work for the Dallas Cowboys. That is all coming up. But before I get into the show today, I hope you guys are enjoying your weekend. I'm definitely enjoying my weekend. My weekend has been pretty good up to this point, and I hope your guys' weekend is going just as well. But let's get into it. We're talking about the Dallas Cowboys today, and the Dallas Cowboys will be heading into their 30th season since their last Super Bowl win in 1995. It's been that long since the Dallas Cowboys have won the Super Bowl, 30 years, and, well, it's still counting, and the Dallas Cowboys are still looking to go back to those days when they were winning Super Bowls. But the Cowboys, they'll be heading into the 2025 season after a disappointing 7-10 campaign in 2024, and it was also an injury-plagued season for Dallas that saw their starting quarterback go down with a torn hamstring, Dak Prescott going down, and he had to have that surgically repaired. And then at the end of the 2024 season, Mike McCarthy decided that he would part ways with the Dallas Cowboys, and some people thought that Mike McCarthy got fired. That really wasn't true. Mike McCarthy was never fired. His contract ran out at the end of the 2024 season, and the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones and Mike McCarthy decided to mutually part ways. So, but what we look at with Mike McCarthy, even though he coached 5 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys, in 21 and 22, Mike McCarthy led the Cowboys to back-to-back 12-win seasons, and he won 2 divisional titles, but only had 1 playoff win in 5 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. So you could say the Cowboys really underachieved, and owner Jerry Jones decided to hire Cowboys offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer, who's really been the offensive coordinator for about, 10 different teams up to this point, and he has now become the new head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. Mike McCarthy hired him as the offensive coordinator. Brian Schottenheimer has been the offensive coordinator for the Dallas Cowboys the last couple of seasons, and now he enters his first year as a head coach. And Brian Schottenheimer has no experience being a head coach. He's never been a head coach, so this is his first time in his coaching career. He'll be a head coach of an NFL football team. And if you guys are wondering if the last name familiar, well, you're right. Brian Schottenheimer is the son of legendary coach Marty Schottenheimer, and Brian Schottenheimer, going into his first season as a head coach, his dad, a legend, Marty Schottenheimer, who is in the NFL Hall of Fame. So a lot of Cowboys fans, they did not like the hiring of Schottenheimer when it was first announced. And, well, I can't say that I was a big fan of the signing either. And, some people were scratching their head going like, well, this is another yes man for Jerry Jones. And, Jerry Jones is just going to, tell him what to do and all this stuff. And, and at first I was like, okay, Brian Schottenheimer, he's a good offensive coordinator. I remember him being the offensive coordinator for Rex Ryan and the New York Jets. If you watched that Hard Knocks back in 2010 with the New York Jets, I remember that very well. And, some people compared Brian Schottenheimer's hiring to Dave Campo. If any Dallas Cowboy fans out there remember Dave Campo. I mean, Dave Campo was the head coach for the Dallas Cowboys in 2002, and really it didn't work out with Dave Campo as the head coach. And can Schottenheimer take on the same mantle that has befuddled his previous six predecessors, which is Chan Gailey, Dave Campo, Bill Parcells, Wade Phillips, Jason Garrett, and now add Mike McCarthy to that list. And the question will be answered come September if Brian Schottenheimer will work for the Dallas Cowboys, being their new head coach. But we know one thing about the Dallas Cowboys is that quarterback Dak Prescott, who tore his hamstring about, week 7, week 8 of the season. He is back healthy after missing 9 games last year, and due to that torn hamstring, the Cowboys will be bolstered by a strong draft class led by right guard Tyler Booker. They made some moves during free agency, but still didn't do a whole lot to improve the team from a year ago. Now, yes, the Dallas Cowboys, they did make some big trades. I mean, of course, the trade of George Pickens, which I've talked to you guys about that trade and what that could mean for the Dallas Cowboys. And we'll get into more detail about that again a little bit as we go into the show. But now I want to get into the position players, and we're going to start with the quarterbacks, and of course just starting with Dak Prescott. He's back after that hamstring injury that made him miss the rest of the season. It was a torn hamstring. He missed the last 9 games. He has missed 26 games the past 5 seasons for the Dallas Cowboys, and Prescott also might find a way to put the quarterback run back in his game. Now, if you guys remember when Dak Prescott first came out with the Dallas Cowboys in 2016, Dak Prescott, you saw he was running the ball a little bit more. They're doing a little bit more read option with him and stuff like that. We'll see. Now, of course, Dak Prescott, he's bouncing back from another serious injury. Not the first time that he's had to bounce back from a serious injury. If we go back to the 2020 season, Dak Prescott had that gruesome broken ankle that he had to have surgery on, and that took a long time to recover. And Dak Prescott, we know what he can do. And now I think if the Dallas Cowboys were to kind of incorporate Dak Prescott more in the run game, I think it'd help him. Now, don't run him wildly out of control and then have him end up re-injuring himself again. But I think, with Brian Schottenheimer, you could do a little bit of that read option kind of stuff with him a little bit. And, Dak Prescott, when he first came in the league, the Cowboys were doing that when Jason Garrett was the head coach at the time for the Dallas Cowboys. But Dak Prescott, since that ankle injury, really he hasn't run very much since then, and just coming off a torn hamstring, we'll see how much he can run. But it's something that I would like to see the Dallas Cowboys do a little bit. Now, if you guys remember, just 2 seasons ago, Dak Prescott led the NFL in touchdown passes with 36, finishing second in passer rating with 105.9, and third in passing yards with 4,516 yards. And the one narrative that still looms large over Prescott's head is the struggles the Cowboys have in the playoffs, and that seemingly has been the thing for over the last who knows how long now. I mean, really the last 30 years, the struggles with the Dallas Cowboys not performing well in the playoffs. I mean, it goes even back to the days with Tony Romo, and it continues to be something. It continues to be a narrative that has plagued for the Dallas Cowboys for a long time. Now, Dak's first 4 seasons, he ran 241 times for 1,221 yards and 21 touchdowns. And now that says something about Dak Prescott. When this guy can be able to run a little bit and have that mobility that we saw him in his first 4 seasons, I think, the Dallas Cowboys, they are a really good team when he's able to do some of that. And that's why I'm saying, they should incorporate him running the ball a little bit more. Now, not to the extent, like I said earlier, about, running him into the ground and then end up getting another serious injury or something that's minor. You just don't want that, like a pulled hamstring or or a sprained ankle. You don't want that kind of stuff, but not out of control. But like I said, I hope the Dallas Cowboys will incorporate some of that run, and a healthy Prescott, including the run game, could help this team tremendously for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the real battle in training camp is who's going to be the backup behind Dak Prescott. That's really the big question for the Dallas Cowboys going into training camp. Who's the backup quarterback? Well, we talk about what the Dallas Cowboys did. They went out and acquired quarterback Joe Milton in a trade over from the New England Patriots. Milton, who had spent his first 6 seasons in college at the University of Tennessee, had 37 touchdowns with just 11 interceptions during his career with a 142.5 passer rating. Now, Milton, he did, if you go back to last year with Joe Milton did have one of the strongest arms in last year's NFL draft. I mean, the guy had a cannon of an arm. I mean, I've seen videos of this guy throwing the ball 80 yards down the field. I mean, it's really, truly impressive to watch for Joe Milton. Now, the one issue with Joe Milton that has continued to plague Joe Milton is the accuracy issues. That is something that really hurt him at the University of Tennessee, was the accuracy issues. He had a very strong arm, but he wasn't very accurate. Now, throwing the ball deep down the field, he was extremely accurate, but the short to intermediate routes, he was very inaccurate, and that's something that had been a struggle for him at Tennessee. It was definitely a bit of a struggle for him in his first year in the NFL last year with the New England Patriots. But for the most recent report I heard coming out of OTAs and mini camps is that the Cowboys, they've been working with Joe Milton on the accuracy issues, and hopefully, the Dallas Cowboys can get that fixed. I heard Brian Schottenheimer has been working on him with it, so we'll see what Joe Milton can do. Now, if Joe Milton didn't have those accuracy issues, I think Joe Milton probably would have been a first-round, maybe second-round draft pick at the most, because the guy had one of the strongest arms in the draft last year. I mean, we can talk about Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels and Drake May. I mean, those were the top 3 picks in the 2024 NFL draft. But to be honest with you, Joe Milton, I think, if he had fixed some of those accuracy issues, I think he would have been very much a high draft pick. Likely maybe a second-round draft pick. Could have easily been a first-round draft pick if he didn't have those accuracy issues. Now, the other guy at quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys is Will Grier, who has been a journeyman in his NFL career up to this point. Grier has only started in 2 games in his NFL career, and Grier did have a stint with Dallas back in 2023. And of course, by the way, I just kind of forgot to mention this about Joe Milton really quickly. Getting back to Joe Milton, he did make his first career start in the NFL in the last week of the season last year against the Buffalo Bills. And Joe Milton, he did complete 22 of his 29 passes for 241 yards and 1 touchdown. And even though the Bills played their backups in the game, and so did the New England Patriots, the Patriots didn't play any of their starters in that game last year. None of the Patriots were not in playoff contention. The Bills were in playoff contention, and it was an intriguing start for Joe Milton. So that's another thing to add about Joe Milton. I think if he can get those accuracy issues fixed, I think he could be a potential star in the NFL. But getting back to Will Grier, so Will Grier, he did have a stint with the Dallas Cowboys in 2023. He did have 2 career starts, and if I had to say right now between Grier and Milton, I would say right now Joe Milton is the backup quarterback going into the season, and I think Will Grier will likely end up being more of a practice squad type player. So when we talk about Dak Prescott, when we talk about Joe Milton, when we talk about Will Grier, right now, those people out there that are saying that Joe Milton could potentially take over the starting quarterback job for Dak Prescott, well, right now that does not seem to be the case. I think that's a little silly to say that Joe Milton is going to end up taking over the starting quarterback job this year or next year for the Dallas Cowboys. Joe Milton, he's still a work in progress. Now, like I said, if he can fix those accuracy issues, I think Joe Milton will be a star in this league because he has the potential to be a star. He just got to fix those accuracy issues on those intermediate to short routes. And if he can do that, this guy could have a great career in the NFL because the guy has one of the strongest arms I have seen in a long time. And you know what? We'll see. I think he's in the right place with the Dallas Cowboys, and I think Schottenheimer and his coaching staff are going to help the Dallas Cowboys out quite a bit. So that's about all for the quarterbacks right now. Now we get to the running backs, and the running backs are a little bit of a different story. There's no clear leader in the room, and it will be interesting to see which player will step up for the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys, they pretty much went out and got 2 running backs in free agency. They went out and signed Javonte Williams over from the Denver Broncos. They also signed Miles Sanders over from the Carolina Panthers. Of course, Cowboy fans, you might be familiar with Miles Sanders a little bit. Of course, played with the Philadelphia Eagles a couple of years ago. He signed with the Carolina Panthers in 2023 after having a really good 2022 season. And now he is in Dallas, hoping to make the team. And the Cowboys, they drafted 2 running backs. They drafted Jaden Blue out of the University of Texas, and they drafted Phil Maffa out of the University of Clemson. And the Cowboys, they still have 1 veteran player back for the Dallas Cowboys, and he's really the only returner from last year in the running back room for the Dallas Cowboys, and that is Deuce Vaughn, and then you also have Hunter Luepke. So those 2 guys are really the only remaining running backs in the room. Hunter Luepke, a little bit different. He's more of a hybrid player. We'll talk about that a little bit more. And the Cowboys, their run game was, not very good last year, and it's really been a problem for a couple of years now. They were ranked 24th in attempts, 27th in yards, and last in rushing TDs, and head coach Brian Schottenheimer vows to run more in 2025. And with Rico Dowdle now with the Carolina Panthers, he left, and Ezekiel Elliott, who remains a free agent and was never going to work bringing back Zeke anyways. I mean, we talk about Ezekiel Elliott. Ezekiel Elliott really, to me, as much as he was great for the Dallas Cowboys the first 3 seasons, he was drafted in the same draft class with Dak Prescott in 2016. But to be honest with you, I mean, it wasn't, and this is not me trying to come out and say that, I have something against Zeke or, something like that. I just don't think he was a great signing for the Dallas Cowboys. And, it just didn't really work out with Ezekiel Elliott. So the Cowboys, they're looking at probably another running back by committee this year because, they're, like I said, there's really no clear leader in this room. But right now, if you had to really look at it, I'd say who's RB1 going into training camp? Right now, I have to say Javonte Williams. He looks to be RB1 in his rookie season with the Broncos. He really looks like it right now to me. So, but we talk about Javonte Williams in his rookie season with the Denver Broncos. He nearly reached 1,000 yards in his first season, and 4 games into the 2022 season, he ends up suffering an ACL, an LCL, and a posterolateral corner tears that ended his season, and he really hasn't looked the same since then. And he rushed for 513 yards and 4 touchdowns on 139 carries in 2024, and Williams did have a career-best 346 yards receiving for the Dallas Cowboys. And, Javonte Williams, I mean, he's really one of those guys. He does a really good job receiving out of the backfield. He's good running in between the tackles, but we'll see what he can do. So, that torn ACL, LCL, or MCL, I can't exactly remember what I just said now, but, really that injury in 2022 kind of hurt Javonte Williams. Now we look at Miles Sanders, who had a Pro Bowl effort with the Eagles in 2022 and left the Eagles for the Panthers, in which he signed a 4-year, $25.4 million deal. And unfortunately for Sanders, he had a miserable time in Charlotte, North Carolina. He was hampered by an ankle injury, and Sanders just averaged 23.6 yards per game with 3 touchdowns over his 2 seasons with the Carolina Panthers. Now, Sanders, the one thing I did hear about him is that he did impress in OTAs in minicamp, but he'll have to do the same thing in training camp. So we'll see what goes on with Miles Sanders. Then you have the rookie draft pick, Jaden Blue, who's gotten high praise from Dallas Cowboys fans, and he could be a potential running back 1. But Blue, can he catch out of the backfield? Jaden Blue, he can catch out of the backfield, and he can physically run between the tackles. I mean, he's not a very big guy, but when you really look at Jaden Blue, I mean, he really can do it all. He can catch out of the backfield. He can run in between those tackles. He's a physical runner. He can be an elusive runner. So it'll be very interesting to see what Jaden Blue does for the Dallas Cowboys when the Cowboys do come down to Oxnard. Now, Phil Maffa, who is their other rookie running back, who is a big physical back out of Clemson that racked up 2,080 yards rushing and 21 touchdowns under Clemson head coach Dabo Swinney. Maffa, who is a big bruising thumper in between the tackles, will try to carve out a role for the Dallas Cowboys for himself. So we'll see how they're going to utilize Phil Maffa. You have Hunter Luepke, who looks to be the fullback / tight end / running back. I mean, Hunter Luepke, he can pretty much do it all. I mean, this guy really has, he can play every position. I mean, he's a very valuable player. And, we'll see Hunter Luepke. He's going to be a part of this team. I really don't have any questions about Hunter Luepke. I mean, he's really the Swiss Army knife for the Dallas Cowboys. And, I love what Hunter Luepke brings to the table. Now, the odd man out in this group, really, to be honest with you, for the Dallas Cowboys, ends up being Deuce Vaughn, who has seen most of his action in preseason for the Dallas Cowboys. But Deuce Vaughn, the one thing that has really hampered Deuce Vaughn is his inconsistency in his game, and finding a role for him could be tough, whether as a situational back or, a special teams player. So really for me, that's the only way Deuce Vaughn is going to make this team. It's either special teams or being a situational back, maybe coming in on third downs, maybe will be something that Deuce Vaughn could do. But right now, to me, Deuce Vaughn is right now the odd man out. I really have to see. Now, when this guy was first drafted by the Dallas Cowboys a couple years ago, I was really excited about this guy coming out of Kansas State. Kind of on the smaller side. He's only about 5'5", 5'6". He could hide in between those big offensive linemen. But the problem is that just he's still inconsistent. He still has some problems. And, we'll see. Deuce Vaughn, he's really got an uphill climb to make the team this year. And really, a lot of people, and definitely coming from Dallas Cowboy fans, this is really a make or break year for Deuce Vaughn. So we'll see how that goes for the Dallas Cowboys in the running back room right now. But if you had to tell me who is RB1 going into training camp, it's Javonte Williams. And then, Miles Sanders, and then Jaden Blue, Phil Maffa, and Deuce Vaughn somewhere is going to fit in there. But, it's going to be tough for Deuce. But right now, if I have to look at it, Javonte Williams, RB1, going in to training camp. So now we move on to the wide receivers, and it's no longer just CeeDee Lamb as the lone weapon for the Dallas Cowboys, the Pro Bowler. I mean, he remains one of the best receivers in the NFL, and the one big talked about issue was not having a reliable receiver behind CeeDee Lamb. And that was really a big talked about issue last year when we went into training camp last year. Who was behind CeeDee Lamb? Now, the Dallas Cowboys did have Brandon Cooks. They did have Jalen Tolbert. But to be honest with you, none of those guys really had great production. Now, Jalen Tolbert may have had one of his best seasons in the NFL career-wise last year, but, Jalen Tolbert still dealing with some of that inconsistency. But the Cowboys, they did get a viable option back on May 7th. They made a huge trade for a wide receiver coming over from the Pittsburgh Steelers in George Pickens. And, well, that gives the Cowboys another big playmaking receiver. It gives them a receiver that they desperately need. 6'3", big, tall, makes big, can, go up and get those 50-50 balls in George Pickens. So, I mean, I can't be any happier about this decision. I'm absolutely ecstatic for the Dallas Cowboys that they were able to go out and get George Pickens. And even though 2024 was not the most impressive year for CeeDee Lamb, Lamb still put up a 1,000-yard season and earned his fourth straight Pro Bowl honor. And Lamb could do the same, could do something special this season for the Dallas Cowboys, becoming the second Cowboys receiver to ever earn 5 straight Pro Bowl nods, joining Michael Irvin, 1991 to 1995. Yes, the legendary and Hall of Fame wide receiver, Michael Irvin. So, CeeDee Lamb, there's no questions about him. We look at George Pickens through 3 years in Pittsburgh. His production was among the best at the position, 174 receptions, 2,841 receiving yards, and 12 receiving touchdowns in his 3 NFL seasons in Pittsburgh. And if you look through the attitude issues, the Cowboys have themselves an explosive playmaker in George Pickens. And Pickens, he is in a contract year this year for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, if you remember, we talk about, the issues that with the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin and the Steelers not willing him to pay the big money. And now here we are, George Pickens, he gets traded in a contract year. He's in the last year of his rookie contract. And, well, he's having to make the most of his final year of his contract with a new team in the Dallas Cowboys. And not only that, George Pickens, he's going to have to show that I deserve this money. Now, funny thing is, I was actually read an article this morning before I came on the show today about George Pickens and how much money he could receive. And I was hearing something about he could receive about $75 million from whoever it might be. The Dallas Cowboys, he maybe could receive that money from somewhere else. But if he was to receive that kind of money, whoa. That is a lot of money. So I heard it from some article. I don't know, it didn't really come from a reliable source, so I really can't say how much of that is true. But if it is, that is a whole hell of a lot of money. And to me, George Pickens, if he has a great year this year with the Dallas Cowboys, he's going to get that big money if he has a big year this year for the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm really excited about George Pickens. But besides, the attitude and all this other stuff, I think, the one thing that with the Pittsburgh Steelers is I think there is some level of dysfunction that is going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers inside that organization that kind of made George Pickens mad, and he looked at times, as, some people or the media would say he looked immature, and he didn't look like he wanted to be there, and blah, 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 blah. And, to me, I think a change of scenery for George Pickens will really help. And I think being with the Dallas Cowboys, I think has been a breath of fresh air for George Pickens. And look, George Pickens, he's 24 years old, okay? I mean, yes, he's still got a little growing up to do. But here's the thing. George Pickens, really, when you hear him talk, he just seems to be a humble young man, and that's really, to me, what he is, a humble young man, very down to earth, and, he just wants to, well, from my eyes, it looks like he just wants to play football and knock off the whole, conversation and this narrative that keeps going around him, like as if he is this cancer in the locker room or something. But I don't think George Pickens is a bad guy. Now, we can sit here and talk about that all day long, but to me, I think a breath of fresh air. From what I've heard, his teammates absolutely love him. They've had no issue with him up to this point. And, I mean, he's going to help this Dallas Cowboy team out a lot, and he's going to help out CeeDee Lamb and keep defenses from just zeroing in on CeeDee Lamb. And even though CeeDee didn't even have Dak Prescott for the last 9 games of the season, I mean, this guy still put up a 1,000-yard season. So, to be honest with you, CeeDee Lamb, he's awesome. We know how good George Pickens is going to be. The Cowboys needed a wide receiver that's 6'3" or taller. They finally got that guy in George Pickens. He is really going to help them. And you've got 2 number 1 wide receivers for the Dallas Cowboys. No, not 1 and 2. They're both number 1s. So we'll keep it at that. But anyways, really the biggest battle going into camp at wide receiver for the Dallas Cowboys is going to be who is wide receiver number 3, and that really comes between Jalen Tolbert, KaVontae Turpin, and Jonathan Mingo. Now, Jalen Tolbert last season was his best season as a pro. He was top 10 in the NFL with 143 yards on 10 tight window throws. The one thing Tolbert struggled with is creating separation. Now, that's been a big issue for Jalen Tolbert, is creating separation and finding that consistency in his game. It's really been a big issue for Jalen Tolbert. Now, we look at KaVontae Turpin. He secured his first All-Pro selection and his second Pro Bowl nod as a returner. I mean, this guy, since coming to the Dallas Cowboys in 2022 after playing in the USFL, now the UFL, the United Football League, but at the time they were the USFL back in 2022, the United States Football League, KaVontae Turpin, he signed with a team called the New Jersey Generals, and you know what? The Cowboys brought him in, halfway through, I think not even halfway through, about a week into training camp, they brought him in, and KaVontae Turpin has pretty much ran away with the special teams job as a returner, and he has been nothing but great for the Dallas Cowboys. And Turpin, he finished last year with only 11 receptions for 153 yards over the last 7 games. There's been a lot of talk about Turpin not being utilized by Mike McCarthy, and there was a lot of talk about that Mike McCarthy was not utilizing him the right way. And, to me, that is true. I think there was some things Mike McCarthy could have done way better for KaVontae Turpin. He could have included him a little bit more on the offense and some of those special packages. And I think if the Cowboys had utilized him with some of those special packages that they have, I think KaVontae Turpin would have shined a lot more. So it'll be interesting to see how Brian Schottenheimer will utilize KaVontae Turpin going into camp. And yes, we already know about, a week or two ago, or a week and a half ago, about KaVontae Turpin getting arrested up in Allen, Texas, and he had marijuana and a gun on him. I guess he wasn't licensed to have the gun, but when you look through all that, I mean, to be honest with you, I think it's a little harsh to say that KaVontae Turpin should be released by the team over what was a demeanor. Now, marijuana has kind of been legalized. I don't know how it goes in the state of Texas. I don't live in the state of Texas. I don't really know how that goes. But to me, to be honest with you, I think when you look at the Dallas Cowboys, Kevontae Turpin, I think he's really going to be somebody that will, utilized right, he could really shine and be much more than just a special teams returner. And, as great as he is a returner, I think, you gotta utilize him in the right way. And I think Brian Schottenheimer will do that. Now, Brian Schottenheimer, he does expect Kevontae Turpin to utilize him more on the offense, so we'll see how it goes anyways. But then we go to Jonathan Mingo, who the Dallas Cowboys traded for in November and has never quite found the success during his first 8 games with the team. Mingo has had the size. He's a big, tall guy. He's about 6'2", 6'3", but Schottenheimer is in charge to put him in certain packages and assignments, especially in the red zone. So we'll see. I think Jonathan Mingo, he'll be more of a red zone type guy. The Cowboys also have veteran wide receiver Paris Campbell coming over from the Super Bowl champion Eagles. We'll see how they utilize Paris Campbell. He's mostly been a special teams returner and stuff like that. We'll see what the Dallas Cowboys are going to do with him. They also have Ryan Flournoy, who had plenty of excitement around him early, and he led the team in receptions and touchdowns in the preseason. And it was actually pretty exciting last year to see Ryan Flournoy shine, who was just a rookie. And, I'm going to be very interested to see how Ryan Flournoy does. And really, after all the excitement after preseason, he really kind of disappeared after the preseason. All that excitement died down, and Flournoy, he showed his red zone potential in the preseason. Now Ryan Flournoy, he's not the smallest of guys. He's about 6'1", which is a decent size for a wide receiver, 6 feet, 6'1". But Flournoy, he had a decent rookie season. He had 10 receptions for 102 touchdowns. Now, Jalen Brooks, a 7th-round draft pick by the Cowboys in 2023, found a role and some consistency on both special teams and offense last year. Jalen Brooks really has been a great special teams player for the Dallas Cowboys. After logging 82 special team snaps as a rookie, he doubled that last year with 209 snaps last year, and it will be an uphill battle for Brooks. There are some talented wide receivers in this room this year, and it's a loaded room for the Dallas Cowboys this year. So Jalen Brooks, he's going to have to find some of his consistency that he had in 2024, and he will need to build on that this year, because now that George Pickens has joined the team, and now you add him along with you still have CeeDee Lamb, you still have Jalen Tolbert, Kevontae Turpin, Jonathan Mingo, Paris Campbell, Ryan Flournoy, and then you have, of course, Jalen Brooks, who has been great special teams-wise for the Dallas Cowboys. So Jalen Brooks is really going to have to build on that. Then the Cowboys have Kelvin Harmon, who was drafted by the Washington Commanders in 2019, and Harmon has struggled to stay on an NFL team since then. And Harmon had a good preseason last year with the Dallas Cowboys. He had 5 passes for 70 yards, and he looked pretty good. He's going to have to find a way to stay in the NFL, which, of course, the NFL can also stand for not for long. So Kelvin Harmon's going to have to find his way. Jalen Cropper, he's been a practice standout. The last 2 years I've watched Jalen Cropper, he's always stood out in training camp. He's pretty much stood out during those training camp practices. But the problem is that he has struggled when he gets pressed. And that was an issue when he was at the University of Fresno State. He would get pressed really easily, and, he could never get out of it. And that continues to be an issue with him entering year number 3. And Jalen Cropper has only been active for 1 NFL game in his career. So Jalen Cropper really, I think, is another guy that is another make or break player this year. He's entering his 3rd year he's entering his third year in the NFL, all with the Dallas Cowboys. He really hasn't been able to get on the 53-man roster yet. So this is really, to me, likely a make-or-break year for Jalen Cropper. We'll see what the Dallas Cowboys are going to do with him. We'll see how much more patience they have with Jalen Cropper. But Cropper, he's really going to have to get it going. And then there is a couple of undrafted free agents that I really like. And one of those undrafted free agents at wide receiver is Trayshawn Holden. He's the next name on a long list of exciting undrafted receivers. And Holden, he started his college career at Alabama. He transferred to Oregon. And in his final college season, he was probably the most productive. Spent a couple years at Alabama, spent last year with Oregon. And really, that's where you saw Trayshawn Holden really take off, was last year. He finished second on the team in receiving at Oregon behind Tez Johnson, who is now with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if the Cowboys do keep a sixth receiver, it could be between Holden and Brooks. Now, some people could say, why would I even think about the Cowboys holding a sixth receiver? Now, usually the Dallas Cowboys, they hold about 5 receivers. We'll see if they want to hold a sixth. To be honest with you, Trayshawn Holden, to me, he's going to have to battle it out with Jalen Brooks, but I really like Trayshawn Holden. He was an undrafted free agent to me that I'm surprised that kind of went undrafted, because he really had the big playmaking ability. He's a big, tall guy at 6'3". He's got the size. He can block. He can make the big explosive plays, but he was undrafted. And, I really like Trayshawn Holden. I look at his tape at Oregon, and especially that last season that he had with Oregon. I mean, he was really good. He was kind of buried on the depth chart at Alabama with all those talented receivers that Alabama has and all the talent that they have on their team. So really, Trayshawn Holden was kind of buried on the depth chart at Alabama. He got a chance with Oregon and really shined. But, he's going to be a guy to me that is going to be someone to look out for in camp. And then the Cowboys also have another undrafted free agent in Josh Kelly, who is another underrated signing, who played for Fresno State, Washington State, and spent his last college season at Texas Tech. And his last year of his college career with Texas Tech was his best, but he'll have to improve himself on special teams, not just receiver. Now we go to the tight ends, and we look at the tight ends. The Cowboys, they need a bounce-back season from Jake Ferguson, who had an injury-plagued 2024 season. Luke Schoonmaker, who right now appears to be the number 2 tight end behind Jake Ferguson right now. Now, the big battle, who is behind these two guys? That is really going to be the big question mark at tight end for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, the Dallas Cowboys, they do have Princeton Fant, John Stevens, Brevin Spanford, Rivaldo Fairweather, and Tyler Neville. And Ferguson, who's entering a contract season, is looking to regain his Pro Bowl form from 2 years ago. And while he did have, 59 catches for 494 yards and was decent, and he never really found the end zone last year after scoring 5 in the previous campaign. So Jake Ferguson is definitely going to be looking to get in the end zone a lot more this season. And then you look at Luke Schoonmaker, who has struggled to remain healthy throughout the summer and training camp, and continues to progress behind Ferguson. And Schoonmaker, who is a good blocker and really kind of needs to be more consistent as a pass catcher, really something that has really plagued Luke Schoonmaker. And even though he posted career highs in catches and receiving yards and played in all 17 games, he's still lacking some consistency, and that's something that we're going to have to look out for. Then you have Brevin Spanford, a second-year guy out of Minnesota, had the door open for him due to injuries. And Spanford, who is just one of 6 offensive players to appear in every game, and the only rookie to do so on that side of the ball. And Spanford proved to be a reliable blocker that can get open occasionally. But Brevin Spanford, as good of a blocker as he is, I mean, he's one of those guys that really needs to work on the pass catching side of things and be a more consistent pass catcher, even though he is a great blocker. So we'll see really what Brevin Spanford can do. I mean, he has a size advantage. He's 6'6". If he can be a solid run blocker and add the big play element in his game, he could have a role on this team for years to come. And then a guy that I really liked and really, to me, was standing out back in 2023 was John Stevens, who was an undrafted free agent out of Louisiana Lafayette. He was converted from a wide receiver to a tight end in 2023, and he had an impressive training camp. He would have made the team if it wasn't for the fact that he tore his ACL. I mean, he had the big playmaking ability. He was really shining that year in training camp in 2023, and then he has the torn ACL, and that just kind of put a dagger into his season, and he missed the rest of the season because of that. And Stevens really hasn't been able to stay healthy since then. And Stevens, he's been on the verge of a breakthrough, and that just hasn't happened yet. And I mean, I really think that, if you had to put a guy that could break out, I mean, I put John Stevens on that list. I put him on the list last year. I'm going to put him on the list again this year. I think he'll be a breakout player in camp. I really think that if he can stay healthy, this guy has the big playmaking capability in the red zone. I mean, he's a big target, 6'5". He's got the range. He's got the radius. I mean, he's got it all. He can pretty much do it all, but he just needs to stay healthy. And if John Stevens can stay healthy, man, I think this guy will be on the team. And he's been good enough twice to make the team, and injuries have completely hampered him. And, well, John Stevens, he's going to have to make the team this year, because right now there's another guy on this team that's an undrafted free agent this year that has pretty much the same skill set as him, and that is Rivaldo Fairweather, who was one of the most productive tight ends in Auburn history. And Fairweather had back-to-back 30-plus catches for the Tigers. And in 2023, he set the school record with 38 receptions, the most by any player at the position. And Fairweather has big playmaking ability, and the Cowboys had him as one of their most coveted undrafted free agents. So Rivaldo Fairweather is a guy to look out for, a rookie free agent to look out for in camp this year. Remember the name, Rivaldo Fairweather, because I've heard some good things about him in rookie minicamp and OTAs. So we'll see. Rivaldo Fairweather, big target, 6'3". He's got the size. He was one of the most productive players in Auburn history, so we'll see what he can do. But remember that name, Rivaldo Fairweather. Then the Cowboys, they also have Princeton Fant, who has just figured out a way to stick around. And Princeton Fant is, kind of looking on the outside, looking in to begin training camp, which is a familiar spot for Fant, because Fant is kind of one of those hybrid, versatile players. He can play multiple positions. He can play running back. He can play fullback. He can play tight end. He's got special teams experience, but Fant will once again have to prove himself through special teams, and he's got to compete with Hunter Luepke, who really, to me, right now is the Swiss Army knife. So it'll be very interesting to see what Princeton Fant will do. Then they also have Tyler. They have Tyler Neville, who had just an amazing journey up to this point. And since birth, he's been dealing with numerous amounts of surgeries, hearing loss, and battles with cancer, yet he still looks good enough to land an opportunity with the Dallas Cowboys. And Neville was an every-down tight end at Virginia and showed he can be a playmaker and a blocker. And Neville, he will have a steep uphill climb for the Dallas Cowboys for sure. So I hope you guys are able to stick with me. I know this is kind of a long show. I know I'm talking a lot. I'm going into a lot of detail here, so hopefully you guys are enjoying it. But I got the offensive line next, and I will be taking a break here soon as I get through the offensive line. So we talk about the offensive tackles. The Cowboys, they have signed 4 offensive linemen in free agency to improve the depth and add to the competition. And a tackle, they have Terrence Steele and Tyler Guyton, and they seem to be the starters going in at tackle. Tyler Guyton, you're starting left tackle, and Terrence Steele, you're starting right tackle. And while his knee injury from 2022 got discussed a lot, Steele has missed just 5 games in his career. And Steele, he's a strong run blocker, and he knows how to get downhill. And Steele played some of his best ball towards the end of his 2024 campaign. I mean, he was really good, and that's really, to me, one of his better years was 2024. I mean, he kind of got off to a rough start that year. First half was a struggle, but he really finished strong in the second half of the year. And we'll see what happens with Terrence Steele. Now, there's a lot of talk at left tackle. Tyler Guyton, many considered him to be the weak link on the offensive line, and now he's in his second NFL season. And Guyton had an up and down rookie season, and at one point even being benched. So, the thing with Tyler Guyton is that we don't need Tyler Guyton to be a Tyrone Smith, a Mark Tuinei. We don't need him to be great, but we do need him to be at least be good and be good enough to be able to face off against some of these really good pass rushers. And usually, if anyone knows football, knows that the left tackle position usually is the position where you get their best pass rusher. And Tyler Guyton, he looked really good in camp early on. I mean, he was a guy, if you saw early on in camp last year with Tyler Guyton, he was kind of one of those guys to me that looked to be, somebody in the making that could be a potential star. Now, he got off to a great start in training camp, but as the season went on, he just really struggled. He looked good in week 1 against the Cleveland Browns, but he really wasn't able to stay consistent. And like I said, even benched at one point. So we'll see. And now that Zach Martin has retired, the offensive line has gotten younger for the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys also have Asim Richards, who slowly worked his way into the mix. And he played in 23 games and had 1 start under his belt. And Richards, he will be competing with Guyton at the left tackle spot, or he could be their swing tackle. Now, we talk about another tackle, Matt Waletzko. Since arriving in 2022, he has struggled with injuries, and mostly with his shoulder, which has sidelined him for all but 11 games over 3 years in the league. And Waletzko needs to show more consistency. It's been a big problem with Matt Waletzko over the last 3 seasons. He's not been able to stay consistent, and that's something the Cowboys are going to have to work on with him. And then they also have Akeem Adeniji, the former Cincinnati Bengal, who started 15 games over his 3 seasons with the team, including 6 at tackle and 9 at guard, for a line that has plenty of youth. Adeniji must stand out in camp. He is a veteran player. And then they have a rookie 6th-round draft pick and a John A. Cornelius out of the University of Oregon, who is no stranger to the starting lineup. In his collegiate career, he had 22 starts at Rhode Island and 28 he had 28 the past 2 years at Oregon. He started all 14 games at right tackle in his last 2 years at Oregon. Cornelius, to make the team, he'll have to perform well in the limited amount of reps he's going to get for the Dallas Cowboys. And the Cowboys, they also have Nate Thomas in his second NFL season, spent the year on injured reserve, and Thomas, with his bulk, could play at guard as well for the Dallas Cowboys, and he played tackle throughout most of his collegiate career. Then we go to guard. Now, if there's one person at guard for the Dallas Cowboys that I really don't have no questions about, it's left guard Tyler Smith. Smith, who now has 2 Pro Bowl honors and a second-team All-Pro selection under his belt. With Zach Martin now retired, Tyler Smith is now the Cowboys' new rock-solid guard. And if there's one guy that I really have no questions about, it's definitely Tyler Smith. And then you look at Tyler Booker, who the Dallas Cowboys drafted in the first round of this year's draft. The Cowboys' first-round selection in this year's draft could possibly be a rock-solid guard this year for the Dallas Cowboys. And Booker at Alabama earned freshman All-SEC honors in his first season before capping off his career in 2024 with 2-team All-America and first-team All-Second nods. So, in 371 pass blocking snaps with a Tide last season, Booker did not allow a single sack at the University of Alabama. Booker has enormous shoes to fill, and the expectations of being a number 12 overall pick will put a lot of pressure on him, and he has the maturity and can exceed expectations. So we'll see how Tyler Booker does. I think Tyler Booker is going to be a star. I don't think, he's going to be like Tyler Guyton, where, he's going to look strong early on and then fade. We'll see how it goes. I think Tyler Booker will be rock solid in his rookie season. The Cowboys also have Rob Jones, a fifth-year guy out of Middle Tennessee State, who will also compete for a number 9 spot. And then the Cowboys also have TJ Bass, who was an undrafted free agent in 2023 and has made the team due to his toughness and versatility. And Bass has only started in 5 games in his 32 appearances the last 2 seasons, and he will have to compete. They also have Sadiq Charles, who was a member of the legendary 2019 LSU Tigers, who went on to win the national championship and was drafted by the Commanders in 2020 and played his 4 years in the league, but abruptly retired in 2024 after being with the Titans. And for Charles, he's already behind the 8 ball because he takes time to get back into playing shape after missing a year. So Sadiq Charles, who retired before the beginning of the 2024 season, he's now coming back and he's trying to do it with the Dallas Cowboys, and we'll see how that goes. Then we go to center. We all know about Cooper Beebe after enjoying a standout career at Kansas State and was drafted by Dallas in 2024, which was last year. He moved from right guard to a starting role at center. He had no starting experience at center last year, but he had his ups and downs at center last year for the Dallas Cowboys. But like any rookie, he would have ups and downs, and he was also a part of that as well, kind of like Tyler Guyton with ups and downs. But Beebe, looks to continue to improve. The Cowboys feel like they have a potential Pro Bowler. They also have Brock Hoffman now in his 3rd year as a feisty player that can play both guard and center. And once again, Hoffman will have his work cut out for him, but he's proven he's up for the challenge. They also have Dakota Shipley, who has been a journeyman in his career, who played with the 49ers, Seahawks, and now the Dallas Cowboys, a 4th-year player that has been on and off the practice squad but lacks experience. And like Hoffman, Shipley can play both center and guard, and it will be an uphill battle for Dakota Shipley. Well, that's all that I have for the offensive players. And when we come back, I'm going to take a break, and we will go over the defensive side of the ball. I will also go over special teams as well. And not only that, more coming up you don't want to miss, and we will be right